The second module of research methodology is that about variables, the meaning of research and purpose and dimension. We had already seen what is research, the dimensions of research and the purpose. Based on the purpose, how do we split research and what are the types of research have already been discussed. Now we'll look into variables. So variable is anything that varies, whatever. It could be a concept, it could be a phenomenon. This is actually a very circular definition, but let's just get started with it. So variables are observable hypothetical events that can change and whose change can be measured in some way. So anything that is hypothetical in nature, but it could also change. That change should be quantifiable. So that is what qualifies something to be a variable. How do we go about measuring a variable? A measure of a variable can take several, even many values across the range. If you see, the value is often numerical but not necessarily quantifiable. So before we get into variable, I also want to bring in the concept of lack of a 0 point in psychology. So in psychology, basically there is no absolute zero. So when I say there is no absolute zero, I'm not saying like there is no existence of zero, but I'm just saying with respect to a few concepts, there is no concept of absolute zero. For instance, nobody is born with zero intelligence, though it might seem like a lot of people are, but it is not in reality. Or nobody can have zero personality, nobody can have zero anxiety. So that is something, the lack of something does not mean zero in psychology or in psychological variables as such. So when we go for the measuring of a variable, like a categorical variable, each value of a variable is discrete and qualitatively it defines a separate category. That is, we can probably ask people if they are single or married. We can't ask them how married are you, right? So that is something we can't, the number, maybe you can say how happy you are in a marriage, but you can't say how married are you, right? So variables such as height, or it could be time, or let's say the number of siblings you have, are all measured variables, so we can use a number along where the person is with respect to that number. So one of the major tasks in attempting assessing the psychological variable is often move the categorical variable to a measured variable. So like I said, the categorical variable can be anxiety, right? So how do you make it to a measured variable? How anxious are you? So we can't say that how much anxiety you have, right? It's not quantifiable like that, but how anxious are you is a quantity. So you can't say the number you score in anxiety scale is not the number of anxieties you have, rather it is a degree of anxiety that you have. So that's how we convert the categorical variable to a measured variable. So when I say, again, it is bringing us back to the psychological constructs. When we say that they are all a hypothetical construct, so there is no absolute zero. The absolute zero is not present here at all. So how do you organize these constructs in psychology? So it could be linked to others in an explanatory framework from which further predictions are possible and testable. So people who are low in self-esteem, for example, might develop a need to feel better than some other people, right? There is always this need to compete, there's always this need to feel better about themselves, but this need might be directed towards members of the minority ethnic groups, or like since the anti-minority prejudice is quite common, you may not be encouraged among your peers, right? So when you say that your low self-esteem is giving you the need to feel superior among your peers, and it is forming a negative attitude towards the minority ethnic group. For that matter, I have low self-esteem, imagine, and I am saying I have the need to feel really intelligent. So I'm going to say I'm much more intelligent than a category of people. So this, I can give you an example, maybe how we say that people who have done online degrees are not qualified as psychologists, but we don't take the competency at all into consideration here, though they might try how much ever a regular mode person would try. We don't consider them to be competent enough because they had done an online degree. So for me, I am more privileged because I went to regular college, but somebody who's not privileged enough to go to regular college, they are the minority ethnic group here. So I'm going to look down on them because I went to a regular college. So that kind of a mindset. So this is because I have low self-confidence or low competence when it comes to counseling. So I'm transferring the feelings to a minority group here, right? So yes, how do you define psychological constructs operationally? So probably it's like a set of instructions we give for us to define. An operational definition gives us more or less valid method to measure some part of a hypothetical construct. So it covers the whole of what is usually understood of the construct. So let's say an operational definition that could express rich and diverse meaning of human intelligence. So we can say that it does not encompass every aspect of intelligence, but it encompasses only the aspect of, let's say, academic intelligence or the intelligence that's used by majority of people. And then we are going to more basic concepts like for reliability, validity. What is reliability? Any measure we use in scales or in statistics should be reliable, otherwise it's useless. So this is also applicable for our psychological constructs. So the question is, when they are retested over time, they should produce the same results. That's what we call as reliability. So validity is when the test or construct measures what it is supposed to measure. So the psychological scale, when it comes to reliability, if I'm going to do a scale on aggression today, and I'm going to test the same individual with the same scale in another 2 years, they should give me almost more or less the same score on aggression. That's when I call the scale to be quite reliable. But when I say validity, I'm constructing a scale on aggression, but what if it measures anxiety instead? So that is not a valid scale because the scale is not measuring what it is supposed to measure. So that's why we call it validity. So these are the basic concepts. I'm sure a lot of you know. Just a quick clarification on that. Sample size, you know what is a sample? In a population, the number of people you pick and choose for your study, the number of people who participate in your study are your sample size. With respect to sample size, we always denote it by the capital letter N. For example, for a case study method, the N always is equal to 1. So it could be mixed sample. You can say you take a random sampling. You can take you say purposive sampling. You can take cluster sampling, different sampling. We'll see it how it works in the later classes. So what you call as a sampling frame is a population from which we will sample, but is often more than a vague term for population. So when you say population, it's not a research term per se. When you say my sample frame is, sampling framework is this. So sampling frame is from this city or this country, For instance, you want to say there is a particular population you want to take samples of, you call them a target population. Whereas when you say my frame is a bigger word. So I want to take a survey of engineering students in Chennai. So Chennai is my sampling frame. The students who pursue engineering are my target population, out of which people who will do my study are my actual sample. So you understood the difference between sample frame, target population, sample. So sampling bias. So in order to make our scale or study to be more reliable, we need to always prefer a sampling that is heterogeneous, not something homogeneous. For instance, in case of, let's say, purposive sampling, I need to do a study on doctors. So my purpose of the study is to find that aspect in doctors alone. So I'm going to do a purposive sampling. Whereas when you say convenient sampling, I'm in Chennai, I'm residing in Chennai, so I'm going to take people or schools based in Chennai, in and around Chennai. So that is according to my convenience, right? So, but that is not going to give me, so that lets me to name my paper as the study conducted in Chennai. I can't say the study in Tamil Nadu, or I can't say in India. So we had once, we attended a public viva, which became a very big issue, that one person, they had taken samples from 4 major cities in a state, and they had given the title of their research as the name of the state. Like they said something aggression levels in Tamil Nadu, but they had only taken samples from 4 cities. Where Tamil Nadu has so many districts and so many sub-districts, they had taken only metropolitan cities in Tamil Nadu. So which was a bias, right? That's what we call a sampling bias. Sampling bias does not let us to generalize our results. It's because the population you're taking is pretty homogeneous, it's very uniform. It's very similar to one another. So people residing in a city will behave in a particular way versus people residing in a township or in a tier 3 area for that matter. So because the accessibility, education, exposure, a lot of factors go into it. I'm not trying to make a judgment here, but rather it is the way people behave, and it is the kind of situation they are in often decides the kind of behavior they are also exhibiting. So that's what we call as sampling bias. In that, to avoid a sampling bias, we always take a representative sampling. So representative sample, for instance, I'm going to take the doctor example again. I'm going to see the impact of NEET on doctors, or the impact of entrance exam on doctors. So I'm going to take a representative sample from government colleges, private universities in and around India, or in and around South Asian countries. So I'm going to take a representation of the medical students of South Asian countries. So that is my representative sample. So we do not, so we want a mini representation, so that is a good cross section of the sample. For instance, if you want a small sample of nurses, that will fairly accurate tell what nurses in general think about their rewards and the status of their job, then we need a sample to reflect the range of characteristics in the nurse population at large. So we can't just take one country, you can't just take one city and say a generalization. The representative sample should be broad, but it should also be small in number for you to understand it a lot better. Equal probability selection, random sampling. So equal probability selection is, we also call it EPSEM method. Equal probability selection method is a procedure for producing a sample into which every case in the target has an equal probability to get selected. For example, I'm going to take in this apartment, there are about 20 people. If I'm going to do a EPSEM method, all the 20 people should have equal chances to be a part of my study. So that's what I'm calling a EPSEM method. Here you also have random sampling, where you can just pick and choose. You can do chit method, you can give them numbers and then pick them odd numbers, even numbers. That's all random sampling. So random does not mean haphazard. You can't just go around and pick people and say random sampling, but it's just not simply haphazard, but it is also haphazard at the same time. The strict meaning of random sequence is that no event is ever predictable from any preceding event or sequence. So to get an unbiased sample, you should take a fairly representative by selecting individual from important subcategories and describe under the stratified sampling. For example, we can say that I want to study the impact of social media on young adults. Then I can't just take people who are about say 25 to 30. I should take 25 to 30, 30 to 35, 35 to 40. So it is a big spectrum. So 18 to 40 is the young adult spectrum, of which I'm picking a good representation of the young adult population. So that is what I call a random sampling, rather than sending it to people and then like, you know, struggling with it, or like just sending it to people who you know is not random sampling. Random sampling is really haphazard, but at the same time it's not careless sampling method like we see.